Time is money. So let me not waste your time, because now for the first time ever, there is a CNG powered motorcycle. It's called the Freedom, and while the original Freedom kept LML alive single-handedly for 13 years, this one is by a different company, Bajaj. The Bajaj Freedom 125. Aside from that name and his job as a simple commuter, the two are completely different. And this one seems simple on the face of it. A CNG tank there, a petrol tank here, 125 cc's, blah, 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 blah. But the real question is, will it explode? No, or at least it shouldn't. CNG is new on a motorcycle, but it's not new in general. Cars, buses, autos and cabs have had CNGs for ages now. The only difference is that instead of being a few feet from you, it's now right under your nuts. Bajaj is nuts. They literally drove a truck over this, rammed it into a crash test barrier and more. No deformation, no pressure loss. Of course, there could be failures out in the real world. This is a machine at the end of the day, but hopefully those failures aren't as generation-ending as you might think. Okay, so your sausage should remain intact, but what about your hot dog? Will it be cold by the time you finish filling CNG? Of course, to find that out, we need to head out of the studio and towards a CNG pump, which is exactly where I'm going right now. Okay, so there's two or three sort of unique things about the CNG pump. Number one is that it has petrol and CNG both, like our motorcycle. Number two is that the CNG line here is actually smaller than the petrol line. There's about 20 or 25 two-wheelers that are waiting to fill petrol and literally no one in the CNG line. The third thing is that we've also spoken to the owners of the petrol pump and they've let us sort of skip whatever other line there was for CNG. So the time it's taken us to fill CNG here is not really representative. It's sort of a luck that there's just not many people filling CNG. Aside from that, this already had about 1/3 tank of CNG. We filled it up. It cost us 97 rupees and 1.15 kg of CNG, and now we have a full tank of CNG and we're good to go. Now, as you saw, it literally took me 5 minutes to fill up CNG, but that was down to firstly our luck and secondly down to the fact that this is a very, very interesting product today. So literally everyone asks you to skip the line so they can ask you 100,000 questions about the motorcycle. When that does sort of wane out, when the interest in this is gone and when there's enough freedoms on the road, you won't be able to skip the line, and if you reach at rush hour, you will have to wait a long time. And that brings me on to the next question: infrastructure. Now, Bajaj isn't really getting their hands dirty with any of that. They expect demand to create the supply for more CNG pumps in the future. But ask yourself, when was the last time you heard demand for CNG was a problem? Me? The only problem I've heard is the supply and the wait times of CNG. For the Freedom to work out today or even in the future with other CNG motorcycles, the infrastructure, it needs to start scaling up right about now. So if the CNG infrastructure isn't great either, doesn't it then just make sense to buy an EV? No, because the Freedom 125 is meant to be a workhorse. You can tell that by just looking at the factory-fitted anchor points for top boxes and luggage. That's intent right there. Electric scooters are awesome. They've got floorboards to tuck away lots of battery neatly into, and they're a silent, fun, fast way to commute. But they're not workhorses. The Freedom 125 isn't designed to do just a morning-evening commute. It's built to run all day long. And EVs just aren't ready for that yet. But does the math work out for it to be a workhorse? Okay, so I'm not great at math, which is why we're giving a shout out to Om, who is a fellow PD Army soldier, and he did the math for us on our Quickies video of the Freedom 125. Now, the number he gave us is how much it costs to run the Freedom 125 for 320 kilometers, which of course is the total advertised riding range of the Freedom 125, and compared it to the Shine 125, the most popular 125cc motorcycle on the market. Now, we went a step further and got the cost per kilometer for the two motorcycles. Now, Shine 125 is already at a very low 1.8 rupees per kilometer, but the Freedom 125 takes it a few notches lower actually, with a per kilometer cost of rupees 1.09. Now, that doesn't seem like a huge difference, just about 80-70 paise if my math is correct, but the difference is 40%, which is why if you extrapolate that to over a month and take, for example, 40 kilometers of riding every day, you get a per month cost of 2,160 for the Shine and just 1,308 for the Freedom 125, and that is not a small difference. But of course, this isn't free money for you to save, because the Freedom 125 is pricier than a Shine 125 by about 20,000 rupees. To recover that would take you close to 2 years. So really, for the mat to work out, you need to ride it a little bit more. By a little bit, I mean 60, 70 or maybe even 100 kilometers a day. And at that 100 kilometers a day, you'd break even in less than 10 months. But I know what you're thinking. These are answers to questions you already have. What you want to know is, can you do a knee down on it? No, at least I can't. Maybe Marc Marquez can. And if your next question is, why not CNG scooters? Well, it is a possibility for sure, but like I said earlier, CNG makes sense as a workhorse. For the average commuter, the downsides of CNG, the extra weight, the longer wait times at CNG pumps, and of course having to go to 2 different pumps to actually tank up, far outweigh its benefits. And then that brings me on to the next question, the final one, the one that we've all been waiting for. What's it like to ride? It's smooth. The engine is refined whether you're in CNG or petrol mode. There's little to no vibrations and you can cruise at 70 to 75 kilometers per hour all day long. Stay on the throttle long enough and you will cross a speedo indicated 100 kilometers per hour, which is nice. If you're wondering, no, you can't really tell which mode you're in, which is great. But the thing is, the way this thing rides isn't really that important. It stops, goes and turns just fine. My concern is range. Because even though Bajaj has been a bit, say, conservative with the CNG efficiency figures, because I have been getting above 102 kilometers per CNG very consistently. I've been getting about 105 with mixed riding. That also included sort of hard riding in bits and pieces as well. But even with that, even if you say you can do 350 or 370 kilometers on full tank and full petrol, that's still not a lot of kilometers when you think about it. Anyways, I've always wanted to say this, so with that, back to the studio. Okay, I have a final few questions from you guys, and these are all really intelligent questions. The first one is, can you cook with the CNG cylinder? The answer is sadly no. CNG and LPG, the gas you use for cooking, are different. The second question is, can you start the motorcycle on CNG? The answer is yes, you can start it on CNG or on petrol, and you can switch from CNG to petrol on the fly. Next question, why is the seat so long in caps? Well, the answer is packaging. It's simple. The CNG cylinder sits under the seat, and if they had to not design a seat and design bodywork around it, it would be really weird and bulbous. So I think Bajaj just went the easy way and just designed the seat to sort of cover the CNG tank's existence. And I think it's actually worked out pretty well. You can't really tell this is a CNG motorcycle unless I tell you that this is a CNG motorcycle. The next question, why does this have a link type rear monoshock while more expensive Bajaj models don't have it? The answer is packaging. Now the CNG cylinder of course takes up some space, and because of that other components have to move. So if they went for a twin shock setup, the seat height would be increased by 40 to 50 millimeters, making it only accessible if you're like 7 or 8 feet tall. So for mere mortals, Bajaj went the extra mile and engineered the more expensive link type rear monoshock to basically make the seat height accessible for the large audience. And if you actually take a look at the monoshock, it's mounted below the swing arm for better packaging. Now that brings me on to the final question. What do I think about it? Well, I honestly think this is a very interesting take on affordable commuting. It's a bold, daring move, and I'm glad Bajaj and India are the ones to make that move. The idea is still at its infancy today, and it only really makes sense if your goal is to have the lowest rupees per kilometer, making this perfect for the Zepto Rapido space right now. Like I said, the luggage hooks at the rear as factory fitment is enough proof to suggest that. Remove the top box and ferrying people around on this long seat won't be a problem either. But hopefully in the next few years, with demand for more CNG motorcycles and hopefully more competition in the CNG motorcycle space, I expect the technology to improve as well. Because today, like I said, a big problem for me is range. A Splendor can go twice the distance on a full tank and sometimes take half the time to refuel, and you need to do that refueling at just one place. You don't need to go to two places to fill up the tank. So the question is, what are you really saving with the Freedom 125? Because remember, time is money. And if you've got the time, let us know what you think about the Freedom 125. Hopefully we've answered all the questions you had, and if we haven't, ask below and we'll be there with the answers. Action कौन बोल रहा है?
अरे आप खुद ही बोल रहे हो ना।
अरे भाई मेन कैमरा पे खड़े हो, एक्शन तो बोल दो यार।
एक्शन
3, 2, 1 एक्शन होता है यार। 3, 2, 1 एक्शन।